right, we're going to get going. Everybody, if you could please stand for the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The roll call, please, Amy.
Mr. Ennis?
Present.
Mr. Bova? Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Coyne? Mr. Dalia?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Haskell?
Here.
Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Miola?
Present.
Mr. Santacroce?
Here.
Ms. Sesney?
Someone.
We're going to give her an award if she makes it. You have the draft December 4, 2023 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, deletions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Now, the election of officers, which is always almost an embarrassing thing. The current officers are up for re-election. Of course, if any board member wishes to run for a particular office, that's also available. Otherwise, our current officers would be the slate. It's a board decision.
Which is Chairman Ellis, Vice Chairman Vince Coyne, Treasurer Bruce Brodsky, Secretary Amy Passacanton.
I will make a motion to go with our current slate.
Second.
Second. Thank you, George. Any further discussion? And don't be afraid about that discussion.
Sure you guys want the job?
I'm sorry.
Sure you guys want the job?
No, we're never sure about that. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, and thank you for your confidence. The first item on our agenda would be the fourth quarter investment statement, which is in the first item in the committee reports and in your packet. Jim?
Okay. Public authorities laws require us to provide you a quarterly statement of investments with any earnings on those investments and any expenses. So it's a two-pager. What I wanted to point out this year, so this is for the full year. You'll see at the bottom, the second page, interest income, $1 million. We budgeted $250,000, and I'm sorry, $350,000 for the year. We did,
Estimated interest income.
yes.
Amazing. You guys
Yes,
are very-
because at the time, if you'll remember, back in October of 22, before the 23-year budget, rates were down like a quarter percent for an investment. They ended up at the end of the year over 5%. So a huge change occurred during the year, and so as a result, we ended up with $1 million as opposed to the budgeted $350,000.
Did you have to lock them in for a year or no? So
Well, we have
75%.
various ones, mainly treasuries and CDs. So some of them are a year, some are 6 months, some are 2 years, 2.5 years. So we ladder it a little.
Are we going to have any issue on the IRS?
Arbitrage, well, we also set aside some money for that in our 2024 budget. I put aside a certain amount. It's going to be, it may, right now, because each bonding, throughout the year, we have a calculation done for arbitrage, and so far, we haven't had anything.
If we make too much money on the bonded monies, bond money we put in the bank, if we make too much interest, we have to repay the Internal Revenue Service based on certain calculations. We had to do that once before.
What's the percentage?
Well, it varies because what they do is they calculate based on what we're paying. So it varies from 1% to 4%, and what we're making varies too. So they do a calculation, and if we earn any more than what we pay out, then we have to pay back to the IRS. We've only had to do that once.
When we sell bonds, they have staggered maturity dates going out 20 years or 30 years.
Okay.
So depending on the maturity date, the interest rate changes based on how long it goes out. And so the long-term ones with the higher yields and the higher interest rates are usually safe from arbitrage, but some of the shorter-term ones, if that money is invested in a reserve account, if it's earning 3.5% or 4%, portions of that bond series were borrowed at lower rates than that. So the difference is calculated and then has to be rebated to the IRS. It was done to prevent municipalities from speculating and borrowing money just to invest it and try to earn interest off that, even when they didn't even need the money in the first
Our
place.
policy is only to invest in government secured or insured.
They're all triple.
Securities, right, right.
Did we budget about $90,000 for an arbitrage rebate potentially?
I can't remember. It was between 50 and 75. It shouldn't be too much. Back in 2001, I believe it was, we had to pay the IRS, I think it was like $90,000 because the rates were so much favorable, more than what you're paying out.
So you're looking at 10% of your gross? On average, 10% of your gross revenues, you gotta pay the IRS?
Well, it depends.
If it goes
It-
over,
I don't,
give or take?
yeah, it's usually a dollar for dollar. So they do a calculation, and anything over, you have to pay back.
Oh, so they do the calculation, you just gotta pay them?
Well, no, we have a separate company that does this. Yeah, we have a firm that does all these issues, and they do them from time to time.
Just for an IRS payment? Wow.
But not all the interest was earned on bonded money either. Some of it's operating funds that could, locked up for short terms.
Yeah.
And that's not part of that equation. So
Not accounted, okay.
Right. So, it's a lot of money and a lot more than we anticipated. So it's a good thing. It's a good story.
Well done.
So if we're able to help the ratepayer by addressing lowering our net costs, the IRS will say, well, no, you can't. So we're gonna take the money from you.
Right.
But we keep track of that, as you said, we have.
Can't lower it 2%?
Hmm?
Never mind.
Any other questions for Jim? Is there a motion to approve? Thanks, Bruce. Second. Thank you, Rich. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. The committee reports, November finance, you want to do them both one way or the other?
So since we haven't met, we did both November and December monthly financial reports. I believe they're in your binders. Yeah, I want to focus on December because it's the full year, December year end. For the year, as I've been mentioning in previous months, we're down 5.4% in consumption, which is, if you can remember back in February and March, we were down actually close to 10%. So we recovered throughout the months, which is a good thing. So the way I look at it is the consumption that was in 2001 was at this level. 2022, we went way up, and now we're back down to the levels of 2021. So we're very consistent with 2021, but we went up in 2022. So consumption is really parallel to what happened in 2021. Water sales were, as a result, we're down 1.3 million for the year compared to budget. Just a little over 250,000 compared to the prior year, 2022. At the same time, we reduced our expenses, so we're actually down $1.9 million in expenses for the year compared to budget. And during the year, we anticipated this. We saw what was going on, so we put a stop to some of the spending that occurred, that was budgeted to occur during the year. So overall, we ended up with a good.
Surplus there, right?
Yeah, we actually have, an amount. So for the year, I think on a cash basis, we ended the year to the good operating wise, $400,000 before we made our deposit to our reserve. So we did pretty good for the year considering that we are down.
we slammed the brakes on spending pretty early.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, a couple areas like chemicals wasn't anticipated, but the rates went up on chemicals, so we ended up spending a lot of money on chemicals at the treatment plant. And forgot what other, yeah, there was other spending that we kind of put a stop to as well. Yeah.
Any questions for Jim regarding the statements? Is there a motion to approve? Thanks, Bruce. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Reaffirmation of the mobile device policy, which is in the miscellaneous section of your packet. Are you doing this?
So most of you have heard this before. I'll repeat it again just so Frank is a little more familiar with it. And by the way, welcome Gene Santacroce,
Thank you.
new board member, appointed by outgoing Mayor Rob Palmieri for the city of Utica, and Gene is appointed to fill the remainder of Frank Matolo's term, which has 1 year left on it. So welcome.
Thank you.
So for your benefit, under public authorities law, we're a New York State public authority, we are required to have certain policies brought to the board every single year. This is part of the Public Authorities Reform Act, because apparently all the public authorities were out of control across the state, but I haven't found one yet. But nevertheless, we have a series of policies that every year are supposed to come back to the board for modification and or reaffirmation. And I guess the purpose of it is to make sure that the board is always in tune with all the policies across the organization. So this will be coming up periodically over the next year. We're trying to take them department by department. We'll be bringing them in pieces. There's 12 or 14 of them or so. We bite them off in a couple at a time to put on the agenda so we don't bog the whole group down doing endless policy changes. This one is a IT security policy. It remains almost unchanged from the last time it was drafted in 2019. In red, you'll see a couple of changes that have been put in place, really to just sort of reflect changes in our technology platform and new additions. Jim Mack is here from our IT department if anybody has any specific questions on where these suggestions come from or why they're there. And Jim, did I miss anything? Is there anything you need to add?
No.
Okay. So essentially, it's almost the same exact policy. We've just added a few items on it, and all employees are given these policies after they're reaffirmed by the board and are trained in how to abide by it. And whenever we have new employees, they go through this training and have to sign off on a various number of policies, this being one of them.
What are the mobile devices connected to?
Jim? We've got mobile phones that go into our servers. They go to email, they go to...
We have mobile phones that connect to a Microsoft Cloud.
Pardon me?
We have mobile phones that connect to a Microsoft Cloud. We have laptops and tablets that connect back to our servers.
So, I mean, are any of our systems sensitive systems?
Accessible by mobile device?
Yes.
Any other questions regarding this policy? Someone care to move as presented? Thank you, Gene. Second on that?
Second.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. The pipe loop study. Is that you, Pat?
Not new. It's a continuation of an existing project dealing with lead regulations and lead service lines. We have to not only develop an inventory to find where they all are, but also we have to explore chemical treatment adjustments to try to lower those levels. Phil Tankor has been running the show on this entire project. We had a company called Corona Environmental working with us for the last year. What our crews did was harvest a number of lead service pipes out of the ground during the lead service line replacement that was done in conjunction with the city. We have them set up in a test loop at our maintenance facility. We've been running different chemical protocols guided by the consultants. Phil and our team down at the maintenance yard have been running that. Those results are in, and I don't want to steal Phil's thunder, so. Sorry about that.
Is that for me?
Nope. So, Phil, maybe you want to explain real quickly how the first phase concluded?
Sure. Yeah, so as the board approved, we fed phosphates into the pipe loop because they're an effective corrosion control. It is a requirement of the federal regulation to look at phosphates for lead and copper release. The three part per million dose gave us a 52% reduction in the study, so that's very good. Of course, I know Pat briefed the board at the last meeting. There's been some additional changes to those federal requirements. So we would still have to look at the alternative corrosion control. We really have an opportunity now to look at altering the pH of the water in the system, and that could enhance the effectiveness of the phosphates as well as help us with some other unintended attributes such as disinfection byproducts, which is something we've discussed in the past. So the second phase of the project is quoted at $101,000. We have some dollars left from the phase 1 study that we want to apply towards this, and we have some additional monies that we'll be able to allocate to fully fund the project. It'll be about another 12-month study.
And we need roughly $50,000.
It was 55,000.
55,000 of money from other locations and reserve accounts that Jim and Phil have found. It's money that's on hand, that's programmed in our capital improvement program, but we just have had to reshuffle the deck a little bit. So, but as Phil said, there's some surplus from the first phase of the project that came in a little bit under budget. So the next phase, which is required, correct, would require an additional appropriation of about $55,000 to complete that. And by the way, when Phil talks about corrosion control, in this particular application, we're talking predominantly lead that might be leaching into the water from a lead service pipe. It's not necessarily other kinds of corrosion, although that might be a side benefit. But we're talking about trying to control lead levels in the water for a lead service pipe. When the water sits in that pipe overnight and doesn't move because people are sleeping and don't use any water, over time the lead level can start to rise, and preventing that process is what we're talking about doing here.
And that's what the phosphorus do?
The phosphorus, yeah, it actually coats the inside of the pipe and it sequesters. We form a
Like a bond?
yeah, a lead phosphate.
And it prohibits the leads from coming
From
through.
leaching out in the water.
So the first phase was good, again, with the 50% reduction. But again, with the changes to the federal regulation, there's a chance that the phosphates would be enhanced at a lower pH. So that would be the opportunity we're looking to investigate here.
Is there any funding with all of this, with the lead and copper rule changes, any funding coming through to help systems?
No, so the comment period ends today. So comments were due. The American Water Works Association, the New York section of American Water Works, both submitted comments on behalf of utilities. I did have a chance to review those and comment ahead of time on the draft. And obviously one of the most pressing issues is the lack of funding to achieve what they want to achieve.
Who set the mandates? Federal or state? Feds?
Yeah, EPA and then Congress probably.
Actually, California, I think, right? And then the feds went to California and said, that's a good one, so we're gonna use that
So the feds set the guidelines, huh?
for years.
Yes. Yep. And very often it's an unfunded mandate. There may be some funding available. We don't know yet. We'll find that out.
Especially the last 2 years, 3 years, 3 years. They're looking unbelievable.
They're looking to kill us. Pat, the next time we look at the capital plan,
Yes.
I want to see where our reshuffling is coming from, just so we
Yep.
are paying attention to this.
That's one of the things we want to go over at the next capital committee meeting, is the whole project schedule. And yeah. Yep.
Did,
Any other-
I just want to, did anybody reach out to Schumer's office and find out if there's anything there for us to
We're,
recoup?
Dan Falzinski, our principal engineer, and I are getting prepared to do that just now. So
All right,
there's
Talk-
direct congressional spending that they have available, and we're getting ready to apply for that and make those phone calls.
The last federal imposition on our water system was $30 million, and nobody came with 5 cents. So we have a major, could have a major crisis that we face financially over this issue. So keep going, Phil.
Dan and I are actually looking into right now the direct congressional spending process with both Senator Schumer and Gillibrand, as well as on the House side, congressional reps. They have some discretionary funds available, and there's a process to get those.
Because I know Angela told me
Yeah,
there is.
so we're going to be applying for those in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions regarding this request? A motion to approve? Second. Thank you, Frank. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pat?
Yep, thank you. First and foremost, always on my mind, Hinkley Reservoir has recovered substantially with all this rain. It's kind of a strange winter we're having thanks to El Nino. But it's currently at 1220 elevation. The top of the dam, Hinkley Dam, is at 1225. So it's only 5 feet below the top of the dam, which is 13.5 feet above normal for this time of year. That's all well and good, especially this time of year in February. We've often had problems where they let it drain down too low, and with everything being frozen in the watershed, it has no way to replenish itself until spring, and we're operating off of tanks. That's happened several times in the last bunch of winters. This winter is exceptional. However, the drawback is right now there isn't a whole lot of snowpack up there, and so if they continue to drain it down, we might find ourselves in early May without a way for it to fill back up unless we continue to get more rain. So we're always watching it every day, but right now the reservoir is in great shape. So we're operating without really a lot of concern about low water levels, which is typically a problem this time of year, especially in mid-February.
Do we have an automatic agreement with NIPA?
We have a contract that says there's a minimum elevation they're supposed to maintain at all times, which is all the way down at 1195.
Yeah.
And they actually went below that in 2 years, in the past 7 years. So we had to call a halt to it and, pull strings and get people to.
Yeah, I think
get
it's
them to
important that
behave
we
themselves.
make sure they understand that, because with that snowpack being down.
Yeah.
Could
We've had pretty good communications. Communications with them over the last couple of years. They've been pretty proactive in reaching out to us and letting us know what they're doing.
Good.
Is there any issue with if we're not using the tanks as much to replace what we can't get from the reservoir? Has there been any issue with the tanks not turning the water over sufficiently, which is also an
They're
issue?
designed to turn over, as normal part of operations. Some of the tanks don't turn over quite as quickly as they should, which is why we've had these THM problems that we had even just last year. That's a whole separate project, talking about maybe trying to do something with that tank at the airport business park. But the rest of the tanks are designed to turn over regularly, so the water doesn't get too old. It's just a matter of those 2 winters when it got really low. We had to slow down what we were taking out of there, and we almost had to bypass the treatment plant 1 year. So we were starting to drain our tanks, and system-wide we were down to about 70% storage with all the tanks combined, which is not what we want to be in the middle of the winter. But like I said, so far so good this year. One thing that I wanted to mention is that we've been having some trouble lately with some commercial accounts that have larger meters. We have an ongoing meter replacement program. There's a certain number of meters we try to change every single year, because as meters get older, they tend to lose accuracy as parts get worn out, and it's always in the customer's favor. They under-register. So when they hit a certain volume of consumption over the lifetime, depending on the size, it might be 15 years, it could be a little bit longer, it could be 18 years. We then require that we need to get in and change that meter out, because that meter is really kind of our cash register. And our rules and regs say we have to have access to it at all times. So normally we send a customer a letter, we say your meter is ready for a change out, please call this number, schedule an appointment. Most of the customers by and large agree, and there's never a problem. There's some larger commercial customers with larger meters where there's higher volume, there's more revenue, there's a potential to lose more revenue, consequently, where we need to get in and change these meters, and people are balking. And so we could threaten to turn them off, but sometimes that's not always practical either, because there isn't even a valve there to shut them off with. They need to do alterations with a plumber. They don't want to spend the money. So what we'd like to have the board consider, is adding a fee for those people that are non-compliant after a certain number of letters, and begin to make it sting a little bit financially, so that when they do their calculations, they'll say, geez, if I'm going to pay this fee every month for the next 6 months, I might as well just hire a plumber and go do the work I need to do, and we'll change the meter. But we cannot change a fee or add a fee or add anything to the rate schedule without a public hearing. So what I would like to do, if the board agrees, is to email all of you a proposed fee schedule of these kinds of fees for different meter sizes and stuff, and then we could hold a public hearing between now and the next board meeting. And then typically with open hearing, it's required by law for us as a public authority. Anyone that wishes to speak can speak. We close the hearing. The comments are sent back to all of you for consideration, and then you have a clear pathway to vote on it after that's done. But you can't vote on the fee schedule until after a public hearing is held. But essentially, we just wanted to gauge input because we think in some internal discussion between Ann and Jim Mack and I and Dan, I'm sorry, I don't know where Frank, I was looking at Frank in front of me here.
Yeah.
Dan, both have black hair. We've been talking internally, and we think a reasonable fee that strikes a balance between, not being overly excessive, but excessive enough that makes them decide that they just should get the work done and not continue wasting money on this.
We do an unreasonable fee?
We could do an unreasonable fee too. Well, we're talking like $1,000 for like 2 and 3 inch meters, maybe $2,000 for 3 to 6 inch meters, or 4 to 6 inch meters.
Do you know what the cost is for the commercial business or?
It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the circumstances.
What it would cost them?
They may need to add valves if the meter size has changed. They got to do some plumbing alterations to accommodate the new meter.
I just
And
didn't know if you use that as a way to determine your fee. You know what I mean?
yeah, it would have. Then that would end up going case by case, and there's no
Okay.
way to really put that into a rate schedule.
Yeah.
And did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to add on that? Ann Lugano is our customer service manager.
We do a non-compliance fee now for residential properties of $50 after they've been notified for a number of months in advance. So we would really be expanding on that policy. Right.
That $50 is quarterly. The people we're talking about are monthly accounts.
Yep.
So we'd be adding this every single month. And the idea is for them to do the math and say, you know what,
Yeah,
I guess I'm
worth
going to
it,
bite
yeah.
the bullet. But right now, it's not costing them anything to stall it off, and we're losing revenue.
No, I just
Who are examples of customers not complying? That's not common.
Ann or Jim, can you name any off the top of your head?
ConMed?
Okay,
Yeah, they got a little bit of money.
they're not local anymore.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They're not local.
Yeah.
So if you had it for residential, why didn't you have it for commercial? I'm lost.
Hasn't been a problem.
Mostly because at the time we didn't have a real clear picture as to what the cost would be, how many needed these alterations, and whether or not these people were doing it. And most people were complying to it, so we didn't really need it at the time. At the time we put the residential one in place, it was mostly because homeowners didn't want to let us in. Because people know that when you get a new meter, your bill usually goes up a tiny bit, and that's the purpose of it, to recapture that revenue. So it was more homeowners that were blocking us than the commercial businesses. And most of the commercial businesses that we've dealt with do comply. It's just there's a handful of them out there that aren't.
some of the larger ones.
Yeah, and so we want to be able to,
I'm just thinking about
Create
it
a
on a legal
disincentive.
basis. You can't treat one commercial
Well, that's why I was
different
thinking.
than
Yeah, like you said,
residential.
you're
So,
supposed
on a legal basis, you should have just, treated them all the same at the beginning. But whatever, now we
Yeah,
have to
I mean,
clean it up. I guess is that what you're saying?
yeah. I mean, I don't, not sure if there's a legal issue or not, but
Residential, you got to treat. If it's a law and a fee, I do believe you have to treat everybody, even a business.
well, the way the law affects us is that we have to treat customers within the same class the same, but we have a separate residential class and a separate commercial class.
Yeah.
So you can treat them separately. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting.
And now we have an industrial class as well for only one customer, Wolfspeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
what do you need here, Pat?
so if everybody agrees that this is something we want to do, then the next step would be, we would show you a proposed draft schedule, get your comments, and then if everybody agrees, we'll schedule a public hearing. Once that hearing is conducted, then we can bring it back to the board, and the board is able to vote on
So
it.
you send them out to us, we'll respond. If there's a majority, which would be 7, say we're in favor of this, then you'll schedule the public hearing, and then next month we'll address it.
Right. We just don't want to schedule a public hearing and put a proposed rate fee out there without board support.
So what we need tonight is to know if a majority of the board is in favor of imposing this fee, of which I am.
Oh, no question.
You got your answer, Pat.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll try to finish up in a hurry here. Congratulations to Phil Tangor and the lab staff. We are now certified to be able to run lead samples right out of our own laboratory. Phil had the foresight to know with the coming regulations that there was going to be an awful lot of sampling we were going to need to do. And we were spending a lot of money with outside labs, or at least we would have been under the new protocol. We went from having to do 50 samples every 3 years to 100 samples every 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a task. And so what Phil wisely suggested was that we should just get the equipment, get it calibrated, and do it in-house. If you don't know, we have a full-service laboratory, biological laboratory right here on the 3rd floor. If you're ever interested in seeing it, we'll give you the tour. But so we collect samples from all over the system. They run bacterial samples in here, and now we can do lead. And is it just lead or is it lead and copper?
Lead and copper.
Lead and copper. And it's calibrated. It's been certified, and we are now approved to be able to do those samples in house, which means we can not only do them for ourselves, but potentially other systems that want to send them to us. So hopefully we can recoup some of the investment on that equipment.
Just to add one thing, when we spoke with the Department of Health about our schedule to get this accreditation, they told me that it was unprecedentedly aggressive to try to get one by January 1st. That was our goal. And we didn't hit that goal, but on January 30th, we got the accreditation. So
great.
it was, the staff worked really hard to move this forward. I give them a lot of credit. They've really bought into what we can do here. So,
Yeah. Great job. Great job. Okay, so the other thing I want to touch on is that the next board meeting, being normally every third Monday of the month, would fall on the 19th. As we mentioned with these lead regulations, there's a lot we don't know yet. Every spring, I go to a 3-day conference down in Washington, D.C. that's put on by one of the Water Trade Association groups. This one's the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, AMWA as we call it. It's a regulatory conference where members of Congress from both sides of Congress come and talk, as well as EPA regulators, to talk about the pending regs, the funding regulations, funding availability, all that stuff. I'm going to be down there on the 19th. So I had suggested to the chairman earlier that if we could move next month's meeting up a week and do it the Monday prior to that, that would also be advantageous because we've been discussing having a capital committee meeting on a number of projects. And some of those projects are things we want to move along sooner rather than later. So moving the meeting up a week would make it even more advantageous to do that. And just one example is we've talked about the situation with Neptune meters in the past. We're moving close. Bruce, can't do it? No?
No, but don't.
Oh.
You can get a majority without me, but I can't. That's the 18th.
No, it would be a week earlier.
Be the 12th.
It'd be 11th or 12th. Oh,
I would make it.
oh, sorry. All right. Well, we'll figure something out.
Well, Amy will do, if we run into a problem, we can do the 18th without Pat if we have to. But if we can accommodate that 1 week earlier, it might help on a couple of fronts. So let's see what we have. You can check your calendars. Amy will check with everybody, and we'll see if we can do it.
Okay. And other than that, as long as we can get a capital committee meeting together sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that'd be helpful. And then there's other items that we'll move through committee and bring to the board for the next monthly meeting. So other than that, I'll be quiet unless there's any other questions, anything else?
Anything else for Pat? Any old business? Any new business? I need a motion to go into executive.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that our audit is going to be starting the 20th of February. So we actually already started, but they're going to be on site the 20th. So just want to, by the time we meet again, it'll hopefully be done.
Anything else? I don't want to miss it. We need a motion to go into executive session to discuss confidential security matters.
So moved.
Second, thanks, Rich. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.